The city is home to people. It is a concrete, steel, wood, stone, asphalt, brick and glass playground for humans of all sorts. It is also home to actual kids' playgrounds. It is where some of us take our first step. It is where some of us take our last. It's where we get that first job, where we find the one we will, or at least think we will, spend the rest of our life with. It is where we talk to each other, party with each other, yell at each other, honk at each other, ignore each other. The city is a backdrop. It is a colored, occasionally neon-lit background for the canvas that is our lives. The city is a reasonably recent human invention. Much of the behavior we do in cities, we did before the first city was established. Much of it many people still do outside cities. But some of the things we do in cities are exclusive to these concrete jungles, or at least close to it. It's rare that someone is swearing over just missing the subway out on a farm somewhere. Waiting in line to enter a nightclub, mumbling annoyed under one's breath about all the new one-way streets, or imitating Gene Kelly from Singing in the Rain, I believe are also activities mostly taking place in cities. So in a sense, the city is more than just a surrounding. It is a very specific set of places that humans have built all over the world, that causes us to live in ways exclusive to cities. Cities are certainly not all the same everywhere. If you have visited Shanghai, Hyderabad and Lagos, you know that they are certainly very different from each other. And speaking of cities with a global perspective is like speaking of forests in a global perspective. They may look the same in many ways, but knowing of poisonous frogs just isn't going to do you much good walking in the deciduous forest of Scandinavia. Nor is knowing what fish are edible in the Siberian lakes going to do you much good if you're planning a trip to the Amazon. So some of the things I say here will be Eurocentric or Americanized. Sometimes the Asian cities will be relatable to a high degree, sometimes not. Sometimes the African or South American cities are more relatable. Mostly it is just a question of income levels, or when in time the city was established. More recently established cities like Dubai and Las Vegas might have more in common with each other than Las Vegas and San Francisco do. But I think we have a nice journey ahead of us through the winding city streets and avenues. Unless you live in the US, because then they are all straight, but you get the point. In many ways, we humans compete with each other. From the race to reach the egg first, to win arbitrary games on the playground, to running the fastest, or getting the best grades, or attracting the prettiest boyfriend or girlfriend as teenagers. Adults don't compete in the same way. We find more refined ways to show who's the boss of life. Some do it by achieving the highest salary. Some do it by having the most adventurous free time. Some do it by cheering the loudest on one's own child, trying to win arbitrary games on the playground. Maybe the most clear-cut competition some of us do as adults happens when we apply for jobs. That's a real competition for sure. And depending on what the job is, your scale of competition is different. A cashier might only compete with other applicants in the close vicinity. For other jobs, applicants nationwide or even worldwide compete. Nations compete too, not just with national sports teams, but also in the global economy. In a free market, most economic development is a win-win situation. But of course, there are also times where there are winners and losers on a global scale. But cities also compete, maybe more so now than ever before. They compete for hosting international events. They compete for resources from the national government. But cities also compete for corporations and humans. Cities can compete with lower taxes than others. They can compete with a more attractive city to live in, with good affordable housing, low crime rates, visually attractive areas, and with a high level of services. Today, more than ever before, cities are competitors not only with neighboring cities, or cities of a similar size within the same nation. They compete with totally different cities across the world. Maybe that's why so many have slogans nowadays. Slogans separating them from other places, carving themselves a slot in the massive global economy. Meet Lexington, Kentucky, the horse capital of the world. It's no wonder with its long history of horse racing and equestrianism. It's home to a lot of horses. Cordell, Georgia claims to be the watermelon capital of the world. But so does at least 6 other places just in the US. Milan is known as the fashion capital of the world, for good reasons. But then again, so is New York, London, Paris, and Tokyo. Stockholm, Sweden calls itself the capital of Scandinavia, which I guess is just to taunt Oslo and Copenhagen. The succeeding cities are those who adopted well to the modern economy. The cities that weren't ever too dependent on one singular industry, but that early on managed to build up a working service industry. And it helps if you have a well-educated population, not the least in IT. Most cities that rank high on indexes of economic success are in democratic Western nations. But there are exceptions like Dubai, Singapore, and several Chinese cities. Successful cities also attract driven immigrants that contribute to the economy short after arriving. Historically, the access to transportation via water was crucial for the success of a city. But with the advent of trucks and trains and cars, this correlation has lessened in importance. And with the adaptation to the shipping container, forcing the price of transportation far down, ports no longer need to be in proximity to a major city. While all of this sounds good for everyone, it should also be noted that successful cities often are very good at pushing negative aspects of city life away, like violence and other crime. It is not obvious that these problems disappear with that, but rather they can end up in neighboring cities. A successful city is most often a great foundation for a national economy, but it can also create challenges in keeping other parts of the nation, including other cities, alive and prosperous. In dictatorships, we can often see this tendency of a massive capital city, where closeness to the political elite is the only chance of taking part in any economic progress. And what happens to the losers? The cities that lose the battle of the global can be hit hard by being left with a disproportionately poor and uneducated population. A population that is less likely to be served by private corporations, and in the long run, even by the public. With a smaller tax base, maintaining services is difficult, and this creates a negative spiral. And this division of people having faith in the future and those who do not is probably a driving factor in an increasingly divisive political climate. Do cities ever die? There are certainly historical examples of cities collapsing and being lost to history due to war, disease, or natural disasters. When cities first developed, they were built on very shaky ground of agricultural surpluses being transported to the city. When yields were down for some reason, people had to move back to rural living to avoid starvation. But today, cities collapsing completely is very rare. Many are the cities and city districts built on shaky foundation in a world with a changing climate. Cities built close to the shore or in an ever-warming desert. Will the future show cities like Phoenix and Las Vegas that being highly dependent on climate control and food imports was a bad call? Cities have shown to be remarkably resilient, not the least in richer nations. Detroit has, despite all its hard times, started to see some positive signs of recovering, and mankind's ability to build taller and taller flood protection systems should not be underestimated. But Detroit today sure is different to Detroit before the automobile industry crash. Cities today are in a global competition, whether they want to or not. But the question is if those criteria that are rewarded today will be the same criteria that keep cities resilient and sustainable over time. Maybe the fight for companies and inhabitants is just a charade for the real battle about to take place. Another threat is, of course, population decline. Eventually, most nations will have more buildings and cities than necessary to house a smaller population. And while prospecting and establishing is exciting and promises an economic reward, restructuring and demolishing does not. Maybe the future will be one of ghost towns, with drastically falling prices when supply outstrips demand. With time, maybe we can tell the cities that won from the cities that lost, by whether their abandoned buildings are still standing or get taken down. This is sort of the start of a series of videos on cities, suburbs and the rural that is continuing on my channel for the coming months. If you want to see the upcoming videos, make sure to subscribe. All the interactions that you can muster with this video will help me a lot. Thank you for watching.